The first midnight film at Sundance this year. Woo! We opened on Thursday, which seems like a century ago, at the Egyptian, and we're actually the last film now. So that's awesome. So here's the thing. I have an 8 a.m. flight tomorrow morning. I would love to stick around for a Q&A, but I have to go back to Park City to pack my bags, to sleep for like 4 hours, and then come back to Salt Lake and fly out. So I hope you'll forgive me. Hopefully.
Say yes.
Yeah, am I forgiven? Thank you. So, just a little bit. Okay. So, do we have a couple of Alien fans in the house? Okay, very good. So hopefully you're in for a treat, and hopefully you're in for something that will actually surprise you a little bit. And has anybody here in this house, and be honest, never watched Alien? Very cool. This makes me really happy. You dragged this one, okay. Well, hopefully this film will make you want to watch Alien. And, I've been making films about film now for, 12 years, something like that. And there's nothing actually that makes me happier than this sense of like people coming to see the film who haven't actually watched it, who haven't watched the original. They've heard something about it. The last film I did was 7852. Awesome. About the psycho shower scene. It's on Hulu, by the way, if you want to go watch it. And so it's, and every time, I've traveled with that film for like a year and a half. And every time I ask the same question, has anybody in the house never watched Psycho? And there's always people who raise their hand. And I find this amazing. And I also ask them, if you've never watched Psycho, do you know what the shower scene is about? And they go, yes. And I say, can you hear the music in your head? And they say, yes. And I'm like, isn't this amazing? That's a scene of a movie that was made 60 years ago that you've never watched and you can hear the music in your head. That's freaking crazy, right? So if I tell you guys, there's only 2 of you here in the house who've never watched it, but the chest burster scene, yes, you know what I'm talking about, right? Okay, so the impulse for me to make this particular film initially was to make a film about the chest burster scene. And I very quickly realized that to make a film about the chest burster scene the chest burster scene is a very different beast, really, than the psycho shower scene. Those are completely different scenes. And I realized very quickly that I couldn't sort of approach it in the same way. You cannot look at those 2 scenes in the same way. You cannot analyze them or deconstruct them or crack them open in the same way. So I was essentially sort of in a position where I had to make a decision, where am I going with this? And there was one thing that really intrigued me very early on. And so when Ridley Scott, started talking to Giger, H.R. Giger, who obviously designed, a great designer of the film, when they were talking about the chest burster, he showed Giger a triptych by Francis Bacon called The 3 Studies for Figures at the Base of a Crucifixion, which is a triptych that came out in 1944 that completely revolutionized the art world. And you're going to see it, obviously, in the film. In one of those figures, it's very much the chest burster as we know it. But what's very interesting is that even though we're talking about a scene of a crucifixion, the figures in the triptych are the Greek Furies. And so this was the thing that essentially excited me as a filmmaker. I'm like, okay, I want to go down this path and see what's there. And so as a result of this, the film you're about to watch is very much a mythological take on Alien. It's sort of a mythological deep dive into the origins of Alien. And it's a film that really could not have been possible without the amazing collaboration of Diane O'Bannon, the widow of Dan. Yeah, Dan O'Bannon, never gets his due, unfortunately, in Alien. And so she opened her archives completely. And it was mind-boggling. I went to her house in San Diego, and all these boxes were open. And I'm looking at the stuff that's inside, and there's early storyboards from Ron Cobb, where the derelict ship was in fact a pyramid at the time. There's all these early story notes, alternate endings, so many different versions of the screenplay. sketches by Dan from like 1971 when the alien was sort of a bug. There's all these different sort of versions of the bug alien. And then of course, 2 versions, version A and version B of the screenplay called Memory. So before Alien was called Alien, it was called Star Beast. And before it was called Star Beast, it was called Memory. And as you're about to find out in the film, the Memory script was only about 29 pages. So very, very short. He couldn't find a way to get the alien on board. And that's when he met, serendipitously, Ron Shusett, who helped him with the story, and ultimately sort of together came up with this, the chestburster scene. So I'm not going to tell you more about that because obviously the whole movie sort of focuses on that. But before I leave and get some sleep, are there any pressing questions that you have? There's one back there and one here, so we'll go back there. Yeah.
I was just curious what you think the mission of science fiction storytelling is. I'm not sure how much you might touch on that in the film, so maybe you don't want to give that away a little bit, but maybe you might be able to elaborate on that. And just in general, do you think that the industry or creators are following through with that in the state of affairs in terms of science fiction storytelling?
You're talking about the mission of science fiction as a genre, essentially, right?
Yeah, both written, filmmaking.
Well, this is a huge question. So thank you. It's great. I'm going to try and be very short with that. Let me address, if I may, not just science fiction, but genre filmmaking as a whole, because I'm a huge fan of sci-fi. I'm a huge fan of horror, and I feel like, unfortunately, genre filmmaking never gets its due. It never gets the award, very, very rarely, right? And yet, at its best, whether you're talking sci-fi, whether you're talking horror, whether you're talking even westerns, those movies, I think, are transcendent because they really say something very profound about who we are. And I think sci-fi is at its greatest, not necessarily when it makes us speculate, but when it makes us think about the human condition. There's 2 movies that come to mind immediately when I say this. One is Solaris, Tarkovsky, of course. Amazing movie, right? Blade Runner, another, I mean, come on. Ridley Scott, let's never forget this. Ridley Scott gave us, Alien and Blade Runner back to back. Come on. It's extraordinary stuff. But those are movies that it doesn't even matter what, I would almost strip those movies entirely of all the speculative, wonderful things that they make you think about. But when they make you think about who we are, about our existence, about the nature of love, about all of these extraordinary things that are part of the human condition, that's where sci-fi, I think, transcends itself and transcends genre. And and horror does exactly the same thing. So I really hope that, I think we've gone a long way from several decades ago. But I don't think those movies get their due, still today. And I would like to live in a world where we can look up to an alien, just in the way that we look up to a Casablanca or a Citizen Kane. And hopefully, after walking out of this film, hopefully you'll feel that way. So anyway, yes.